All right, so today we're going to cover some pretty basic jQuery methods. We're going to cover some basic page layout, a lot of which we'll get into more next week as we dive into some Bootstrap stuff, but we'll talk a little bit about just kind of general markup and some basic CSS stuff today. The buttons and click events in jQuery, these are pretty common elements that you'll probably find useful as you start to build your projects. And we're going to look at doing some basic hiding and showing of content, again with jQuery, just some really common methods. And through all of this, I kind of want you to be thinking about just other things that are going to be possible using really similar constructions to what we're going to be working with today. The project we're going to build will be something like this. If we come over, yes, here we go. I pulled a couple of images from a journal interactive that looks at the Harlem explosion from a couple weeks ago that shows a street view image, I believe from the Bing Maps, because it's credited to Microsoft Corporation. This is a kind of a Maps street view image, and then this is an AP photographer's image from roughly the same angle. The two are laid on top of one another. On our site, we use this scrubber template that we've built that we use for lots of different things. But for our purposes, we're going to build something a little simpler, which is just this crossfade effect. I'll go over real quick just what this page actually is. You recognize our standard web template here from Aptana, and we've got just a few divs on the page. We've got on the left, we've got a space for our navigation, and then within that, we've got just a couple of divs that we're going to use as buttons. And on the right, we've got one div with two images in it, one that's visible and one that's not visible. And we're using our buttons to fade one image out and fade the other in. And to do some other things with styles that indicate an active state versus a selectable state here. So before would be the active button here, after would be inactive. When you roll over the inactive button, you get a nice rollover state that indicates that it's a button. So again, some fairly basic stuff, but nothing I think we've covered too much up to this point. So let's get started. I've begun by kind of pre-populating the template page here, but you're going to begin the way that you always begin to pull the basic HTML template in Aptana. I have pre-populated this with jQuery, right? So you recognize the Google API's CDN link to the jQuery library. And make sure you include the HTTP. I know a few of you have had trouble with the libraries where I think when you pull from Google, it just gives you this address. You want to make sure you include the HTTP or else it won't load from your desktop. We've added a script reference to our script.js file, which is right now just a blank JavaScript file. And we've done the same with our style sheet, which is style.css. And our index page, again, that page is blank to begin with as well. So, what do we have here? We've got our basic structure in our page. And again, when we load this, let's actually switch over to our file here. I'm calling it buttons, and it is a blank page. And actually, our page is a little too blank. I think I must have deleted this from the actual template file. I believe when you pull the template, it actually comes with a headline in here. So let's just write one in. It's going to be, well, let's say hiding and showing with jQuery. And that should give us a title. There we go. Boom. All right. So next, let's set up some basic markup so we have some place to put these things. I'm going to begin by creating a couple of divs. First one is going to be just a general holder for all of our content, and this is something that's common to almost every project I build anyway. I usually call it main content. And within that, we're going to create a couple of boxes. Remember, these are really just working boxes inside of boxes. On the left side, I'm going to have a div called, let's call it nav holder. Very cleverly named. And actually, you want these things to be named for what they actually are, so that you know what they are when you look at them. On the right, we're going to use this for image holder. And so far these are just boxes on the page. We haven't styled anything yet. Within our nav holder we're going to have two buttons, and there actually is an HTML element called a button. I don't like to generally use them because they just look old. I like to just actually style things as divs. So we're going to create a couple of divs here, and we're going to give them both the class of button. We're going to call one will begin with an active state and one will not begin with an active state. We're also going to add a selectable, let's see, let's do this. Let's type in the words that we're going to have on our button here, before and after. I'm going to add just a nice reference attribute that I'm going to call, let's just call it ref for reference. And this is going to be, it's going to have that property of before, and this one is going to have a reference attribute or reference property of after. And that will become apparent what we're going to use those for here in a couple of minutes. But for now, let's just put them in there. And next, for our image holder, we're going to have two images. Image class equals, again, we're going to use before and after because the selector that we're going to use to target one button over another and one image over another, and they're going to correspond with one another, so let's name them accordingly. Image class, and then of course if it's an image it needs to have a source, and I have actually pre-populated these. I'm going to put these on lore for you, by the way. It'll be apparent when I actually post this on lore, hopefully, but there should be a location for you to download these images. Again, I just pulled these from the Wall Street Journal site. If you were actually publishing these for news, of course, there would be rights issues. We are not doing this for publication, but for educational purposes only, so, you know, just don't post it to your personal site or anything like that, because these are proprietary photos. One is from the AP, and you can't just use AP photos, of course. Yeah, okay. And let's look at the source. It's in a folder called images, and let's see, the before image is called before JPG, and the after image is called after JPG. Alright. Alright. So, let's save this to the page. This is our basic markup structure, and let's just see what our page looks like. We haven't styled anything yet. And look what we have here. We have a bunch of stuff, right? So everything that we just put in there is going to appear on our page, but it's really big and really not where we want it to be. So we need to make a few well, we want to be kind of specific about our styles, right? So let's get into that. We're going to do those things in our style.css. And I like to do, let me show you a little trick for kind of working with this stuff. I like to just copy my markup a lot of times when I have a bunch of things that I've written but I haven't actually styled yet, just so that I can remember their names. So I copy them, and I come over to my style sheet here and I just drop everything in, and there I can see my markup, I can see what I've named everything, what I'm going to need to be able to access here, and that will help me to start writing styles. So, first one, our big outside element is called main content, and I'm going to give this a width of let's see, 960 is a fairly standard web grid size, so I'm going to go with that. Inside of that we have an element called nav holder. Remember I talked in class on Wednesday about percentages, and let's try to stick to that. We've got a width over here of 960. Let's do 1/3 of the page and 2/3 of the page. So we're going to say the width on this div is 33.3%, and the width on the image holder div is going to be Is that what I called it? Image holder. Yep, width is going to be 66.6%. And okay, so everything has a width so far, but nothing has a height. The main content I'm going to give a height of 600 pixels, let's say. I'm not sure what that's going to look like on the page, but that's what I'm going to go with. Percentages generally work the same way with height. So if the height of the parent container is, or the parent div is 600 pixels, I can say that the height here is going to be 600 pixels. So let's just make it 100%. So we'll expand to the height of the parent, and I'm going to do one other thing with both of these, which is I'm going to put a float attribute, which is float left, and this will ensure that these divs appear side by side. So let's get rid of these guys for a moment so we can actually see what our page looks like now. I'm going to do one other thing here, which is I'm going to add a class for, or add a property rather for divs. Remember, a div is just a div, so it doesn't get a hashtag or a hash. It doesn't get a dot. It just gets div because it's an element. So all divs, I'm going to say, let's supply an outline of 1 pixel, solid line, and gray. Okay. So here we come and load the page, and look at that. We have, see these gray lines? These indicate what our divs actually look like, which is a really handy thing because we can sort of see what is happening on the page, what's happening with our CSS. I use this a lot when I'm doing CSS layout just for it's just sort of guidelines. This is actually, I think, sort of where the phrase wireframing comes from, because you're actually just looking at this kind of grayed out wire-like structure. I don't know, I guess that makes sense. And okay, so what can we tell you? We can tell that we have a button here and a button here. We have a column on the left that is 1/3 the width of the 960 column piece. I'm going to use my little ruler tool here to measure this and see that this is indeed 960 pixels up to here. But goodness, what do we got going on here? We've got this image overflowing this container. So the image doesn't have a property. The image is just going to kind of overflow its bounds. So let's make sure that we have that we are dealing with our image here. So our images have, oh gosh, do they have a class in them? I don't remember. Image class before and after. So let's say could just use image. Let's do this. Let's use the parent class to sort of separate these images from any others that we might have on our page. So what that would look like is image dot image, no, the class would be image holder space image. What this is going to do is sort of nest this style, right? So only images that are within a div called image holder will have whatever styles we put here. And the styles I'm going to prescribe are width 100%. I'm going to say that, let's say, let's just begin with this and see what it gives us. Look at that. Okay, so our images are 100% the width of this column, but we have another issue here, which is that they are, well, they're awful shallow, right? And they're also stacking one on top of one another. So let's go ahead and put a position, because we want them to appear in the same place. If I put a position here, position absolute, that will pin that into an absolute spot on our page. And if I do that, let's see, something weird's going on there. One is on top of the other probably, but now they're too big or something. Not sure what's going on. Anytime we position something, I guess we want to give it an actual top and left. So let's say that the top is 0 pixels and the left is 0 pixels, and that will get us to, ooh, fills up the whole page now. And that is because you can't use a position inside of well, I'll get into that here in just a moment. I'm hitting the 15 minutes, so I'm gonna hit pause and I'm gonna start a new video here, all right?